Hello, everyone. Welcome to A Turn of Events, where we help put a positive spin on the future of your business. I'm Annette Naif, the CEO and Creative Director of Naif Productions. We are a strategic event production company based in New York City. We specialize in corporate, social, nonprofit, weddings, pretty much everything. We are doing live events now. It's back. We're excited. If you still want to do virtual, we can help you with that as well. But so we do live, virtual, hybrid. Contact us. Happy to talk to you about it. I do have a Facebook group, which is for event and wedding planners. If you are looking to network, build your business, I'm offering free training, 30 years in the industry. So I'm giving you lots of great content and to help you build your business and network and really do some great things in your business. So join us over at the Event Planners Society Facebook group, and I'd love to see you there. I do offer some free workshops, so you don't want to miss out on those, okay? So my next guest, I'm really excited about. He is a powerhouse, Damian Nordmann. We're going to talk about the 4 universal laws for entrepreneurs. He is a business coach, mindset coach, and mentor to superheroes. He works with Dharmapreneurs. These are entrepreneurs whose businesses are unique expressions of their higher purpose, to help them align with the superhero success laws for greater impact and probability. He coaches people to transform their money story to achieve 6-figure incomes and live the most authentic and embodied life possible. I'm really excited that you're joining us. Hi, Damian.
What's up? How's it going?
I'm good. So happy you're here because I love to talk about money and how to do better in your business and get more money. That's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah. I was just rocking out to the music earlier.
My song, right? I know every time I start that, everybody's like in the background going, and I love it. I think it's funny. I always think I'm going to change it, but it's fun and exciting and gets us going, right?
Heck yeah.
Okay, so first of all, why don't you tell everybody how you got into this, a little bit about your background, so we can learn more about you.
Oh my gosh, that is such a long story. I will give the Cliff Notes version. So for 22 years, I was with an organization called the School of Metaphysics, where I learned these laws that I'm going to be sharing with you. I taught them to people. I learned meditation. I was practicing meditation and just a ton of amazing stuff. Everything from like the very esoteric stuff, right? Like lucid dreaming, all the way to the very practical stuff, like being able to focus your attention longer and set and achieve goals, right? Be able to actually accomplish things in your life that you want to accomplish. So that was my sort of like the bulk of my background comes from that. And then when I left that organization some years ago, I, started hiring business coaches. I started immersing myself more in that. And I had really done some of my own self-study as far as money goes and prosperity and wealth. And we taught some of that at the School of Metaphysics. So really, it's been this kind of wild, you hear all these people tell their story of being like, oh, I was in corporate for, 30 years. And then I went off and did all this other crazy stuff. Well, I kind of went from being a very sort of esoteric and very much, this very unique sort of situation to moving into entrepreneurship and business and all this sort of thing, which has been really fun for me to marry those principles together.
Yeah. I was in corporate for many years, and then I went in, started my own thing. And it was just because I was bored. The economy crashed, and I thought, all right, I got to do something. And I started an event business. So there you go. I didn't really think about doing it. So, and here I am 12 years later. So it's very exciting, and lots of things have happened in those 12 years. So great information. So, so why don't you tell us what are universal laws?
It's really laws that affect everyone. And these are like things in nature, things in consciousness and creation. People know about like the laws of physics, right? Like there's certain laws of physics like gravity and how things work. That's how we can fly airplanes and send people to the moon, because we understand those physical laws. Well, the metaphysical or universal laws are very similar, except that they apply to how we live our life. Right? They apply to how we manifest things in our world. And everybody or most everybody has heard of the law of attraction, which we'll talk about today. And I'll give you sort of my version of that, because I've kind of taken what people have taught about that to another level. But yeah, these universal laws, they apply to everybody. And there's different ways that they're described. You can find them in pretty much every book on success. Whether they know it or not, they're talking about some version of one or more of the laws. The holy books of the world talk about the universal laws, even though they don't use those words. Every great teacher and every person who's had any kind of success in any field lives these laws. Most people just don't know what they are or what they're called.
Right. So what are some universal laws that can help someone with their business?
Yes. Okay. So particularly, there's a few I selected because I actually teach 13 universal laws, but we're going to talk about a few of them today. So just a few simple ones. We mentioned the law of attraction. That's one that we definitely want to touch on. The law of clear perspective is another one that's super important that we want to look at. That's usually one of the first ones I work with people on. And then the law of relativity is a huge one. And then the law of believing and knowing is also, I would say, super key for people as entrepreneurs. And we can dive into any of those that you'd want to look at.
Well, you pick which is like, what would you say is like the most important one? I mean, I think they all are probably really important, but what would you pick?
Well, I would say, all four of those super important. Law of clear perspective is so important because it really dictates that you have to get clear about your values, about what you desire, about what's important to you, for anything to happen in your life the way you want it to happen. Now, it's okay if you're not clear for a while, but you always want to have that frame of mind that you're going to get clear, right? That clarity is going to come to you. You're going to do something to bring it to you. You're going to learn how to meditate or meet somebody or get a business coach or do something to start to figure out really what's important to you, right? So that's actually kind of the first one. That's why I teach that one as the first one, because, if you've ever been unclear in life, which I have, I mean, 5 years ago, I was very unclear. I was depressed. And it's like, oh my gosh, things were just a downward spiral, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then I would say the next one is law of attraction, because everybody, I think everybody, whether they know it or not, and most people know it, everybody wants something better for their life, and entrepreneurs want their businesses to grow, right? And usually it's a combination of wanting to express why they came here, what it is they're giving through their business. Like your business, you're helping people to actually become whether putting on events or helping event planners or whatever else that you've got with that. But then everybody wants to also be successful, wants to have more money, wants to be able to have more of the lifestyle they want. So with the law of attraction, there's 3 factors to the law of attraction. It's really simple. It's so simple, I think most people overlook how simple it is. And the first factor is really like our state of being, right? How do we feel? Because when you're angry, when you're upset, when you're scared, when you're fearful, when you're worrying, you're pushing away the things that life and the universe wants to bring you, right? And when you're happy, when you're joyful, and sometimes this can be really subtle too. Subtly, the more you're focusing on gratitude and things that make you feel good, love of the people in your life, you tend to draw more good to you. And this is all sort of generalized, right? Like the better you feel and the better you allow yourself to feel, and that can be mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, the better you feel in every way, you attract things to you much easier. It's like everything just gets easier and easier and easier. Then the second factor to the law of attraction is the content of our consciousness. It's our thoughts, right? What are we actually thinking about? Because everybody's probably noticed this if you're really paying attention. When you're thinking about the things that you don't want, when you're thinking about problems too much, when you're thinking about how the argument you had with somebody, you tend to manifest more of those things. When you're focused on your desires, when you're focused on the outcomes you want, when you're focused on the purpose for why you want something, it's so much easier to attract it to you. Like we literally start to create it in our minds. And so those 2 factors are the first important things, is that state of being, that content. And then there's a third factor, and this factor often gets overlooked by even some of the really good teachers of the law of attraction, And that third factor is this individual factor. It's your inner being factor. It's like a karmic or ancestral factor, as well as like your dharmic nature. And so this has to do with things you need to learn, areas you need to grow in, challenges you may have come into this lifetime like really wanting to understand. And then also the fact that there are beneficial people that are just, kind of slated to come into our lives. So understanding these individual factors can be a huge proponent once you understand, our thoughts are real, and that also our emotions and our energy is so much of what draws things to us. So those are a couple of the universal laws. We can go into more of them, but I don't know if you wanted to comment on that or ask other questions.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on it. I just want to turn my light down. It's making me crazy here. I look like I'm shining away here. I don't like that. So you had mentioned about clear perspective. So I know that a lot of people that are I have a Facebook group, obviously, that I mentioned with a lot of wedding and event planners who are looking to start their own business. And I know that it's hard to have that clear perspective when you're starting a business. There's a lot of doubts there. And I think along the way, I know with me, the same thing is I got a coach, and you mentioned getting someone to coach you and mentor you, and that helps clear that out. So that was a huge shift for me when I started my business, because I had no idea how to price myself. I had no idea how to talk to the clients. What forms do I use? What's the system that I'm supposed to have? Like, I know how to plan events because I had done it for 20 years at that point, but I didn't know how to pull the business together. And running a business is a whole nother event in itself.
Yeah.
So my perspective along the way has definitely changed. So I think that, my values are still the same, but my perspective is changing, and my ideas of how I want to run the business, or like my coaching program has been, added in. I've been doing that now for 7 years. And so that was something I didn't think I was going to do that early on, but someone came and asked, can you help me out? So I love to teach and I love to help people. So if I could do it for free, I definitely would. But, we have to show our values, right? So I always teach that too, is make sure that you're, showing your values. So I just think, as far as my point is like your perspective can change along the way. Is that true? And that's kind of, how you look at it. So, and I love the whole thing about, I'm very big on, don't put that negative energy out there. Don't say something negative like, oh, I'm never going to get a client. I'm never going to get that job. I'm never going to because if you put that energy out, I'm a true believer that that's what's going to happen to you. So I always try to have those thoughts about, I'm going to get that client, and I'm going to get even bigger clients, and I'm going to get, it's like all of that stuff. I just don't like to I feel like if I put it out in the universe, I have almost like a superstition about it. That's kind of how I feel about it. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned something. You mentioned like, can things change? Can our values change? Can our, and that's actually another law that I teach called the law of evolution, which is really necessitates that we have to change, and that we really want to change. Yeah. And there's always going to be some kind of growth that we go through, and it's different for different people, even though there are some universal things that happen. I mean, you talk about people having their midlife crisis or having different things that come up. I mean, and it's going to look different for everybody,
right?
But everyone goes through growth. Everyone goes through change. Everyone can go through transformation. So that's the first thing I would say is, it's important that we're actually choosing to grow and choosing to evolve. And that's where you got to check in with yourself, right? You got to check in and listen to yourself. That's another law of intuition, right? You got to be willing to listen to sometimes very subtle messages that come to us, and sometimes they're loud, right? Sometimes we get an illness, we get in a car wreck, we have something, we our partner says, okay, I'm not in this anymore, right? And you're like, what? And you weren't ready for that. But the more that you can listen and learn to listen to what's really going on inside of you, then it's much easier to make those shifts and changes. And then to go with what you were also saying about putting things out there to the universe, sometimes also that can really be sometimes very obvious, but also very subtle. And sometimes we just have this simple, subtle kind of resistance or feeling of blockage or belief that we just haven't quite yet flipped that switch on yet. And I think there's always a reason for it. I think there's always a growth related reason for it, but there's also, you could say this, it ultimately comes down to a choice as well of being able to make those subtle shifts.
Right. I am all about intuition and my gut. I always go with my gut, and growth is super, super important. That's why I love to teach people and help them grow. And I'm always trying to be educated. You and I are in a coaching program together, and there's a ton of stuff in there to learn from. And even if, they're teaching us how to, launch our programs and things like that, but there's so much more to it. The marketing, the sales, the branding, and that all comes from, we can incorporate that into our businesses. So I just knew, like, it's an expensive program, but I knew that was the right growth for me. And so I'm always about, I think learning is really, really important. And I always go with my gut on that. And it hasn't steered me wrong yet. So if you're thinking about starting a business and you're not sure about it, that's something that, I think that's, especially if you're really nervous, that means something great is about to happen. I'm a firm believer about that. Whenever I'm like so scared and so nervous, I feel like, okay, that's probably the right thing I should be doing. So kind of go that direction,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to listen to yourself, your intuition, your energy. But I think what happens so often with people is that they don't try to accurately interpret those things. In some cases, people just avoid them, right? They numb themselves out, and they make choices that really distract them from that. So yeah, I think anytime a person's really willing to tune in, tap in, to listen, oh my gosh, it can save you not only years of effort, but also thousands to millions of dollars, depending on, kind of what your position is.
Yeah, that's right. Whenever I get that fear, I want to work through the fear. So when I started this program, the show a year ago, I was scared to death. I'm not an in front of the camera kind of girl. I'm a behind the scenes kind of girl. But now I'm excited. I can't wait to get on. It feels natural. It's, I always know that when I have that fear and I get past that fear, I was like, why did I even think that was a big deal, right? So I always, now that I'm older, I understand that there's a different feeling on the other side of it. So that doesn't seem I can work through that fear. So that's the beauty of getting older, I guess. One of them. Okay.
Yeah, and wiser.
Yes, exactly. What's more important to business, the mindset or the strategies and tactics?
Yeah, so this is kind of like, this gets kind of back into the law of attraction a little bit too, because I think ultimately the mindset's more important, although I teach both, right? And I think you and a lot of the people who understand, you have to have both, right? You have to have mindset so that you can be clear, so that you can, like you said, you can keep going even when you're scared or when things are tough. And you have to keep feeding that mindset. Right. And you have to keep growing it. And some people, it's interesting because I try to use different words, because you could replace mindset with energy. You could replace mindset with sort of like emotional intelligence. There's a lot of things you could say that mindset is similar to, and that encompasses, right? Because you have to pay attention to your emotions, your thoughts. You got to pay attention to even how your body feels, because if your health starts to degenerate or something, then that's something to listen to. Right. And then I think so mindset, I feel like is more important, but it is very important to get that strategy and tactic and the ones that work for you, because I found working with clients, and then also working with myself too, it's if you have the right mindset, but you don't have the right strategy, it can be really frustrating, because you're gung ho, you're aligned, you're ready to go, but you're doing things out here that aren't working. And then the other side can be very true too as well, where you might have the right strategy, but you haven't done that work to really align yourself within. So you got you got an excess of fears, you got an excess of doubts, you're insecure, right? You're maybe you're constantly fighting with people. And so you're just kind of bumping heads with people all the time. So I would say mindset's more important, but both are super important to get dialed in. I've seen for a business to be successful. I
totally agree. And I talk a lot about mindset in my programs and when I'm coaching, and also strategy is, I'm a strategic event producer, so it's all about the strategy when it comes to events. So I'm big on all of that. Okay, so what is Dharmapreneur, and how can a person become one?
This is what I love.
Am I saying it right?
Dharmapreneur. Yeah, I actually came up with that word a few months ago, maybe late last year, early this year. I guess it was late last year. It just intuitively came to me because that's the people I work with. So Dharma is a Sanskrit word, or East Indian. It's from India. Just like you have the word karma, which basically, if you really want to translate karma is like our growth, our learning, our indebtedness. It's things that we haven't yet understood. And that's why, they come around to us. Sometimes people see it as a bad thing, but karma is actually a great thing because it helps us understand ourselves. Dharma is what we've already built. It's what we already understand. It's what we're already good at. So if you think about like Strengths Finder, or you think about, your Myers-Briggs, right? The things that make you who you are. Or if you think about your astrology, or really anything, your human design, or anything that makes you who you already are and makes you good at something, and the things you're like, hell yes, I can do this well. I'm really good at this. My strength zone is here. That's your Dharma, right? And you really want to get rooted in your Dharma and live from that. And if you're going to have a business, you want that Dharma to be flowing, and you want to be focused there. A lot of people, myself included, I've been guilty of this. We can get distracted by trying to like strengthen every flaw and get better at things that we don't have any business focusing on. Right. That we can turn over to other people. Like you can pay someone, you can partner with someone, you can find a way to let them do that because that's their Dharma, right? So to be a Dharmapreneur is an entrepreneur who is completely focused in his or her strength zone and his or her higher purpose, and is living that completely.
I love it. It feels right. Yeah. It's like I always, I'm all big on delegating. I don't want to be an expert in, Facebook ads or, I love to market, but I have a marketing team that helps me because I just don't want to, my expertise is dealing with the clients, getting the events, sort of more of the sales side of it. And then, my coaching program. So I definitely try to stay in my lane, and I've learned that early on. And you can advance more. I feel like the more money, I know it costs money to get people to help you, but then you can grow the business more. And I know every time I've put money into my business, it's grown. So that's
absolutely,
but it definitely works. So how can we attract more money into our life?
Yeah, this is good. And again, we're kind of using these different laws as like a foundation here. So again, talking about attraction, and this works a little bit different again for different people because there's universality, but there's also individuality. And so universally, having a greater focus on money, right? That's one way to do it, where you're thinking positively more about it. You're imagining what you would do with that money, the lifestyle you'd have, the creations, how you can help other people with that money. That's sort of that content piece again. Also, just feeling better about money. Most people, I found, most people in the United States anyway, or the Western world, have these blocks around money because it's been ingrained in us, right? And that might have been from our parentage and our society and our culture growing up, where people around us were either poor, or money was hard, or money doesn't grow on trees, or different all these attitudes and thoughts.
I heard that a lot growing up.
Yeah, there's a lot of bullshit about money that is just like ingrained in us. And one of my business coaches made this point too, which I had noticed before he made the point, but I was like, wow, like if you look at the movie Titanic, and it's like it shows the wealthy people as being unhappy, and the poor people are poor, but they're really happy, right? Which is kind of not to say that you being rich makes you instantly happy, but being poor definitely doesn't make you instantly happy. So I think so much of it is getting around these money blocks or transcending them or understanding them and being able to focus on wealth, on abundance, on money, and allowing it to move into you. So I'm a big proponent of whatever you've got to do. Some cases that's immersing yourself in books and people who teach about this sort of thing. I teach about this. I teach people how to release these blocks and to really see money in a way that is whole and powerful and helpful. And then sometimes there's just things inside of us that maybe doesn't even have to do with money that's keeping the money away, right? Sometimes it's our relationships that are not so good. Sometimes it's other areas of our life that we have put off. In some cases, it's because a person's not doing what makes them happy. I really am a huge believer that when you follow your bliss, money can come in much easier. And might not come in instantly, but it can come in way easier than if you're just like grudgingly and drudgery doing something that just you hate, right?
That's never good. And that's the thing, if you don't love wedding or event planning, if it's not your passion and you don't literally love it, don't do it, because you're going to hate it. It's not easy. It's very stressful. But I've been doing it for 100 years. So I feel like that was what I was born to do. It was like, even in school, I was the girl who planned and got everybody together and did all of that. So if it's not in your bones, if it's not your passion and something you truly love, you're not going to be excited and wake up every day. Like, I love to work. I do love to work. I get excited about, okay, what's on the calendar today? And the clients may not always be it may not always be a great day. And some days are more stressful than others. But for the most part, I love it. I love running my business. I love running the business with all the ups and downs. And there's always going to be that. But what I want to say about money is, I know when I first started the business, I was afraid to look at my bank accounts, right? Because you're not making that much. I had a really good job, cushy job. I had a driver. I had my own office overlooking Times Square. I made a lot of money when I had my corporate job. But I was miserable. I was bored out of my mind, and I wasn't happy, and I hated all the people that I worked with. It's like I don't get to hire the people I work with. And so now I do, and that's what I like. I get to work with fun people who love what they do, and we're all just having a good time and working really hard. So, but when I started looking at my money, and I started also doing Profit First, which is a great, paying myself first, which was important. It made a difference. When I followed the money and paid attention to my bank accounts, it really, really made a difference. And I didn't think that was possible, but it did. So
that's so spot on. Yeah, that's so spot on. I love that.
So how can we make our business more profitable? Speaking of that, so what are your suggestions on that?
Yeah, I feel like we've been touching on some of this already, because I always go back to the universal laws. I go back to mindset, and I start there, because again, like you were just describing, if you're not happy with what you're doing, if it's like you're not around the people you want, it's very hard to be able to get things moving. Like, you don't even want to be doing it. You don't even want to be there. Right. So I think that's so much part of also being a Dharmapreneur, excuse me, is that you've got to first love what you're doing. You've got to, and it's so funny, because I can remember way back, gosh, this was like right after high school. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a couple years younger than me. And she was like, well, I want to go to massage school and do massage, but I guess I'm just going to go to college and do all this other stuff, so I can fall back on it in case it doesn't work. And
Right.
like, I've heard so many people, I mean, that was like, I remember that maybe the first time I really heard someone kind of talk that way. But since then, I've heard people talk that way my whole life. And people are always like, oh, I'll do this, but I'll have all these fallback plans, right? And it's fine if you want to have that, but you're really kind of cutting yourself off instead of just saying, I'm going to find a way to do what I absolutely love. And I'm going to make this, I'm going to find a way to make it profitable. So I think very first, people have to be all in, and they have to be willing to take risks.
Absolutely.
Because if you're not willing to take some kind of a risk,
Right.
I mean, there really is no reward. I mean, you got to have, that doesn't mean you have to be reckless or do something, foolish, or just plain stupid. I mean, I'm not advocating that, but certainly you have to start with the mindset and the growthful thinking and the attitude that this is really what I love. And if you haven't figured that out yet, you might need to take some time to do that. Or maybe you try something, and in the process of trying something, you find out, oh, I don't really like this, but this other thing has come into my life, and this is perfect for me. So the first step really is that follow your bliss. And then from there, we've both of us have mentioned this, finding a coach that works for you, a business coach or somebody who can help you with the strategies and the tactics and maybe some of the mindset or maybe some of the other areas that you need. Because having someone who's come before us, I mean, you can't get much better than that, right? Having someone who can say, okay, look, this is going to help you more, or I'm going to save you some time here, and being willing to follow some of their advice. Of course, this is someone you've hopefully already trust because you've been around them, you've researched them, maybe you went to some of their events, someone you can really connect with. Right. But every coach I've had has helped me to make more money, has helped me to relieve stress about my business, has helped me make better choices about my business. And so I just can't even advocate enough. Finding the right coach for you is just ideal.
I couldn't agree more. It's 100%. And that's why I started teaching, because when I first started my business, I could not find anybody to help me. I went to the bigger planners. I had already 20 years in the business, and I went to the ones that were super successful. You want to go to somebody that's got the experience, that's been around, that can help you, and someone that you can relate to. And I was in tears when I first started my business because I couldn't get any. I literally would walk up and say, I was willing to pay them. Like, I'll pay you. What do you want? What is your fee? And they didn't want any part of it. And the funny thing is a couple of them. This is a really funny story, because a couple of them that I specifically knew at the time, and I followed, and we have been up for the same jobs. And I remember the first time that I got a job over them, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, we've been up because we're kind of doing the same things. I wanted to be where they were. And so I just, along the way, built myself, got coaches that finally would coach me. And I've had 4 or 5 along the 12 years I've been doing this. All great, all amazing, but you advance in different ways, and other people have, once you get to a point with them, then there's other things that you want to go to someone else who has a different expertise or whatever that looks like. So, but I just remember the first time that I actually got a job when I was up with that other person, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so, it definitely feels great, but if you really work really hard for it, you can have anything. You really can. I just think you just have to really put your mind into it, and the mindset is all about that. So, and sometimes it doesn't happen, and it's okay, and you just move on because there's going to be other jobs. So,
I feel like that's a great thing for people to hear about your coaching program, right? Because you've been there, you've been you've been in their shoes. Exactly. And you were that person who you wanted help. Nobody would help you. You had to figure some of it out yourself. Then you finally found some people who would. And now you're willing to pass on, these decades of wisdom that you've built over the years of running events and planning events. And I feel like I just want to say that because I feel like anybody listening really who wants to learn event planning needs to come to you. I just feel like you've got it.
Yeah, that's so sweet. I do too. I'm like, hey, I'm willing to give you all my information. And a lot of people have said to me, why do you do that? Why do you coach? Aren't you afraid they're going to take your business? First of all, there's so much work out there for everybody. I couldn't do all the work that is out there. And you have to walk in my shoes 24/7. Even if you did, someone's going to hire me over you or them over me because of personality. They resonate with them, whatever that looks like, right? So I just feel like just be authentic, be yourself, and the right people are going to come to you. And listen, I fired a couple clients along the way, and I'm talking like a large event 2 weeks before the event was my first time I fired somebody, and I was scared to death, and I lost thousands of dollars, but I was being abused emotionally and just taken advantage of. And, it was a very abusive relationship, and I fired them. I was like, it was an out of town event. It was 4 days. It was a big event, and we were pretty much done with the event at that point. But, it's a bad story, but those are the best stories. The worst stories are what everybody learns from me. So because I used to teach a course at NYU, and I would tell all these nightmare stories. There's not a lot, but things come up, and I would tell stories. And those are the best. Those are the things that people remember. And so, I love telling those stories of things that's happened to me along the way. Luckily, not too many, but there are things that happen. And so, it's really funny. So I think coaching is super, super important. So, all right. So where does money actually come from? And if you guys have any questions, we've got Damian here for a little more time here, but if you have any questions, put it in the chat. We definitely want to get it out. But where does money actually come from?
Yeah. And by the way, if anybody wants to ask just some really crazy question, feel free to, or really practical, just anything. But yeah, it's funny because I taught a class, gosh, it must have been 10 years ago now, to some of my students in Dallas when I was with the School of Metaphysics, and I called it a self-worth class. And we talked about this. We talked about where does money come from? And when I ask people that, I suggest contemplate that yourself, but also ask other people, like, where does money come from? You're going to get some very interesting answers. But I think it's so important for people to realize that money. Okay, let's see if I can describe this in a way that really hits home for people, because I think here's a way. Let me tell a little story to answer that. So I've been investing in making some money in cryptocurrency right now. There's a lot of different types of cryptocurrency, from Bitcoin to Ethereum to Helium. There's a whole bunch of it out there. There's a lot of ways you can use it and make money with different currencies. And some people would say to me, well, wait, is it real? Like, is this cryptocurrency real? Isn't it just like electronic numbers and stuff? And I'm like, well, what do you think dollars are? I mean, how often do you actually, first of all, pay with cash? And what is cash but a bunch of paper with a bunch of ink on it, right? And so we no longer have a currency. I mean, it's fiat currency. It's not on the gold standard. It's based on trust, really. And it's also based on relative values. So everything, all money is kind of made up, right? I mean, it's really, unless you have a gold coin, society where you're literally paying with silver or gold or something, money it's just made up. And so money, therefore, you can create as much of it as you want. You can attract as much of it as you want. And so I think as people start to recognize and do like thought experiments where they're like, okay, how come maybe I make $15 an hour or $25 an hour or $100 an hour, and this other person makes, $1,000 an hour, right? For sometimes the same work, sometimes different work, depending on what you're looking at. But I think it's so important to do these kind of experiments and exercises, and then even ask yourself, like, why is the computer I have worth $1,500 or $2,500, and why is this other one? I mean, just to be able to understand the relativity of value that's really what money is. It's the relativity of value. It's what we've assigned to different things. And so, yeah, I think a person can really go a long way to improving their money story and receiving more of their own wealth and self-value, and ultimately having more money in your life when you're willing to do these kind of experiments with yourself and other people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So how does a person discover their inner authority?
That's a good question. And that's, really a big part of what we were talking about with intuition as well. Because your inner authority, it comes through experiences, obviously, but it also comes from connecting in with yourself. And that's one of the reasons why I encourage people and also teach people how to meditate, how to journal, how to question themselves, right? Because, and then of course, putting yourself in circumstances and experiences where you're challenged to draw that inner authority. And that can come through being an entrepreneur. It can come through teaching something or coaching something, because your inner authority is what you know, right? It's what you understand. It's that connection between like the head and the heart, because it's not just the information you have, but also what you understand and the experiences that kind of bridge those together. And I really encourage people to cultivate that inner authority, because then you don't have as much doubt, right? You don't have as much fear. You have a lot more security. You got a lot more confidence, and a lot of great things can come from that stronger inner authority, where you can know, yes, these choices that I'm making for my life and my business are the right choices. Even if I fail with this choice, I'm making the right choice for me right now.
Right, right. I love that. I love that. How can we experience more time freedom? This is like, I feel like I work many, many hours a day, and I feel like I never have enough time, but because, it's busy, it's busy running events, so it takes a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think it all really comes down to choices. First of all, making choices to want to have time freedom, or to want to have anything in your life. But certainly with time freedom, you have to decide, what do I want my life to look like? And I think it's so easy for people to say, well, I'm already this kind of person. I already do this for my work, or this is my business, and I only have so much freedom within this scope of things. So you first of all have to it comes back to that law of clear perspective. What do you want? What's most important to you? And what would you do even when you have the time freedom? A lot of clients and students I've worked with over the years think they want to be their own boss. They want to have all this time. And then when faced with what to do with their time, they're like, well, what do I do now? Or they're like, they just wasted on things that they're like, man, I wish I wouldn't have wasted this last week just kind of, playing video games or watching TV or, schlumping around. So I think first of all,
streaming on social media.
Yeah, going through Facebook, going through Instagram. Yeah, so whatever whatever of your vice is, but you have to decide what you want to do with that time, and then start looking for solutions. And you and I talked about this, I think, earlier, which is hiring people to do things that you're not that good at, hiring people to do things that you don't want to do, right? That frees up a lot of your time. And I think being able to move into that, and also understanding yourself as a leader in whatever field you're in, I feel like most entrepreneurs need to realize that they also need to be leaders. And you might only be leading 2 or 3 or 4 people, but when you're leading those people, you're also delegating, you're also passing things on to others, so that you have time for what it is that you really want. But yeah, there's a lot we could talk about with ways to have more time freedom that most people just don't even think about.
Yeah. Well, my biggest thing is I always try to think about doing money generating activities. So things that are going to make me money, as opposed to like, look, I'm on social media a lot, but I'm marketing. I'm looking, I'm tagged on things where people are tagging me. That's growing my business. I'm not, look, there's times when obviously I'll sit on the weekend and fart around on social media. But for the most part, most of the times when I'm on social media, it's business. It's for business. And if I didn't have to be on social media, it would be fantastic. So money generating activities, I learned that early on. And if I focus on that the most during my time, then it helps with my business. So we do have a question. And Preeti, I hope I'm saying that right, has asked if we want to achieve two to three things at a time, like buying a home or starting an event decoration business. How can we fulfill this dream?
That's a great question. I think that being able to, first of all, realizing that, we're never really doing more than one thing at a time, right? Our attention can only really be focused at one point at any given moment. And so therefore, we've really kind of been touching on this the whole way through, which is that you have to know what's really important to you. You have to use these different universal laws, because then here's a way I think about the universal laws, right? And I am certain that this is true. I believe that as we are creating desires, as we're thinking about what we want, there is this sort of non-physical space that we all exist in, and that our thoughts and our emotions exist in, that is actually doing a lot of the work for us to create what we want, right? I know that might be getting kind of out there for some people, but truly, I believe, and I mean, it's been proven time and time again to myself and other people and clients I've worked with and my friends, is that it's almost like you have this manager that's helping you manifest things while you're not focusing on it. But as long as you're doing your part, as long as you're focusing your part on things can come together very smoothly and very easily. And it does also come back to being able to be relaxed, to being able to be focused, to being able to have a good positive attitude and a higher vibration about all the things that you want. And so if you're doing all of that, things, you can have several irons in the fire, because you're not freaking out about any one given thing, and you're certainly not freaking out about everything. You're fluid, you're moving, you're ebbing, you're flowing, and that kind of comes also down to balancing or being able to integrate your masculine and your feminine energy, because the masculine wants to just go in a straight line and like go gung-ho, right? The feminine wants to allow things to flow and kind of take a journey. And you got to have some of both. If you're all journey, you won't get anything done. If you're all, balls to the wall, you're going to miss a lot of stuff, and then you're going to freak out because things start to blow up in your face. Right. So having those two really well integrated really makes for a more enjoyable experience, and I think easier too.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. How can an entrepreneur make their life and business easier? Oh, that's the biggest question we have so far.
I'm sorry, can you say that one again?
How can an entrepreneur make their life and business easier?
Yeah, I feel like everything we've been talking about today, it really goes into that, right? And so I think, first of all, it does start with that clear perspective of, do you want your life to be easier, right? I mean, just being really honest with yourself, and are you willing to do the things that will make it easier? Because it comes down to simple choices, simple choices every day. One of the books I highly recommend people read is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Oh my gosh, this guy has been studying habit change and habit transformation his whole life, and he's researched it, and he's implemented it, and he's helped people to implement it. So a lot of what he teaches are things that you can install new habits, change habits, break old habits. So much of it comes down to that. So much of it comes down to, what habits do you have that are completely holding you back and that you're wasting time? And what habits do you have that allow things to be fluid, simple, again, where you're feeling really good about it? I can't recommend that enough. Just researching that and being willing to change one habit every, month or two, right? You don't have to, you certainly don't want to try to change a whole bunch of habits at once, because it's hard, if not impossible. But if you're making a shift every month or two or three, where you're building a new strong habit, whether it's your diet and what you eat, or your exercise, your relationships, or how you handle money, or what you invest in with your business, any of that, if you're just honing that thing, you start adding that up a year, 2 or 3 or 5, life is a lot easier.
Yeah.
Much easier.
Yeah, I find that I have to work out pretty consistent. Like I work out in the mornings, and I try to eat healthy. You know, I have my moments, but for the most part, and I've been doing intermittent fasting now. So I've been doing that a lot, but I'm being very strict about it now, focusing on it more. And sleeping is super important. I'm lucky that I'm a good sleeper, so I do get at least 8 hours every night. But when I do that, if I don't do that, my business and my life doesn't feel easy. It's like,
No.
I just feel overwhelmed and there's just too much going on. And so it helps me clear my head if I get my workouts in. I drink a ton of water, which is super important. And I just think that's really kind of it. It just keeps me, focused on what I need to do for the business, because obviously events is a very busy business.
Oh, I'm sure.
I just love you to pieces. Thank you so much for doing this. Such great information, like really, really great information. And I can't wait. We're going to definitely post this out for the people that have missed this, but I'm really excited that you've been here. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, you guys, thanks so much for joining us. I'll be back next week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Take care.